Yes, I'm aware that the college football world is mostly being focused on, the first round of the playoffs starts Friday, the Michigan coaching search, but there's a lot going on right now in terms of the transfer portal. I don't know if anyone's been paying attention, given what happened yesterday. A lot of movement going on. Two big quarterbacks are on the move. Interesting to see there. We are, of course, high atop a improving Jacksonville, Florida. Not necessarily cold right now, but it was this morning. Um, yeah, high atop again an improving Jacksonville, Florida. Verticals Podcast, episode 152. Here on this December 16th. By the way, a anniversary. By the way, December 16th is the anniversary for a very, very significant tornado that occurred in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Just for our weather folks who have forgotten about that, but yeah, interesting situation back then in the year 2000. This is the 25th anniversary, believe it or not. How about that? But we talk about college football here on this show, but hey, as a weather fan, I figured I'd bring it up. But yeah, I got a huge show for you guys today. Transfer portal is on fire. Two big quarterbacks are on the move. Got some thoughts on that. Michigan head coaching search still going on. Excuse me. A lot of things you don't know yet. A lot of things you do know, but a lot of things you don't know about it. And we also have the rest of the round one picks for the CFP. Starts on Friday. We have the two G5 games. And we also have thoughts on a leaked teaser that came out, or that didn't come out, it just got leaked yesterday for Avengers Doomsday, sort of give you guys the whole spill on what happened there. And we also have reaction to Bucs Falcons from this past Thursday. So, yes, a lot to get to, a lot of things to discuss. I have a very sneaking suspicion that this December going forward is going to be very, very busy for us. Even though we won't have any typical shows live, starting next week for Christmas, but we'll have a show today, have a show Thursday, and we're done for really the rest of this year, except for the extra pods that you'll be coming at. Should be starting this time next week, so about 7 days. So be on the lookout for that. But yeah, going forward from now, even throughout the spring, we'll get spring practice going. We'll still have the national championship and the rest of the playoff, and then we'll have the summer, which should be interesting for both college football and Marvel news, with a lot of things ramping up. So if you are new here, first of all, welcome to the show. We do this show twice a week usually throughout the year. No off season for us. We do it every single week for the most part, live or pre-recorded. Talk college football, Marvel news, Star Wars news when it's available, or when it's meaningful to talk about, which right now it is. And we also talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, my NFL team, which is struggling at the moment. But yeah, do the show twice on YouTube live right now, as we are, as usual. And on Spotify for those, it's usually there or so later. I know last Thursday's show is a little bit delayed, but that's okay. But be sure to follow us and subscribe to the channel while you're at it. We're getting so close to getting, well, not that close, but we just need 10 more subscribers. That's all we need, okay? I'm really starting to emphasize it now, since we're, 10 or so days plus, 2 weeks out from the end of the year. We need 10 more subscribers, get to 20. That's our goal. May not get to it, and the show's not going away if we don't, but it'll be nice if we did. So just be sure, check and make sure if you listen to this show on YouTube or on Spotify that you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. Even if you're not a fan of audio or visual stuff like on YouTube, but if you have a Google account, subscribe to it. Doesn't matter if you're a Spotify viewer or a viewer on YouTube. Again, be sure to subscribe. Again, our goal is to get to 20 subscribers. We're at 10 currently. Hopefully we can get more, but be sure to do so. It will help us out and get our goal met, which it hasn't yet, but hopefully it will. Even if it doesn't, we'll still be here, but can't guarantee we'll be in a good mood to start the new year. Again, as you can tell here, the paper, there's nothing written on it, but we're holding it because it's very, very important show we have on our hands. There are a lot of things to cover. As I get back to my notes here, Michigan coaching search update. Who's your next coach going to be? We don't know yet, but there's some ideas out there. So what about Kalen Deboer? Is he out of the mix? Is he in the mix? Well, initially when the lists were out there, the hot boards and stuff like that, the initial feeling was Kalen Deboer was going to be probably where the search was going to start, but it probably wasn't going to end with him. So essentially it's a classic, okay, we'll contact him. He tells us no, we'll move on. But at least we did it. I have a sneaking suspicion they did reach out to Kalen Deboer, who is currently at Alabama and will probably be there going forward. I think they did reach out to him. I think he's told them no. I know that looks bad if you're Michigan's like, man, we couldn't get Alabama's head coach. Well, to echo a sentiment that's been around for it's been around for a while. You typically don't see P4 coaches going to another P4 job. Like, very rare. Like, Mario Cristobal leaving Oregon to go to his own water, Miami. That's like the exception to the rule. So, no, I don't think Kalen Deboer is in the mix right now. I think he's out of it. But I think they did contact him. Like, Michigan probably did reach out to him and his agent, but it just didn't happen that way. It sucks, but that's not the reality sometimes, and that's an example of, why we typically don't see P4 coaches leaving to go take over P4 jobs. Now, as for the other top candidate, Arizona State's Kenny Dillingham, over the weekend, he sort of gave a non-denial denial. There seems to be somewhat of a sentiment of he is definitely number one on the list. We don't know what his decision is yet. We know Kalen Deboer, as we think we do. At least that's the leaning towards him staying. Kenny Dillingham, we don't know. There is certainly a feel that him being offered the job, or him given the offer of the job, he is taking this seriously. He is definitely considering it. I think he is. Now, will he be the next coach of Michigan football? I don't know that. We don't know that. But definitely a good chance that he might be the next coach there. That is a little bit different than Kalen Deboer's denial. So, like, Kenny Dillingham's denial is a lot different than what Deboer said. Sort of echoing what Josh Pitt said on Tuesday, or on Sunday. He has a show tonight, so we'll get an update from him. But my thinking is that Kenny Dillingham is a leader in the clubhouse. I think I can confidently say that. Now, what's going to get really confusing is that, I think Josh Pitt brought this up on social media this weekend, that what really gets really confusing is that when people start using like initials like Kate or Coach KD, you're thinking of these two, right? Kalen Deboer, Kenny Dillingham. So it's very confusing as to which one you're referring to. So that's where it can get a little confusing in terms of your thinking ahead here. But I think Kenny Dillingham is in play. Kalen Deboer probably not in play anymore. Now, as I mentioned when this news dropped last week on Thursday, there were other names I was thinking about here. Like two other names I was kind of wondering, should this get to a scenario where some of your big, pie in the sky hires or candidates get, scratched off, who would be next? Well, two names, I think. One is Glenn Schumann at Georgia. Now, you don't hear that name a lot, but I think you should be. Like Glenn Schumann, in my opinion, kind of not. I know it's kind of like cliche to say, oh, he's the next Dane Lanning, because Dane Lanning was also the Georgia DC before he went to Oregon. But sort of like Dane Lanning or any of these coaches, like Kirby Smart, even someone like Kenny Dillingham, you just don't know until they get their chance. You don't know. I mean, some of these guys have to start somewhere, right? Some of these coaches who people regard as the best in business right now, they had to get their shot somewhere. So if you're Michigan, if you're looking for someone who is from a good bloodline or a good lineage in terms of head coaching lineage, Glenn Schumann we might call if you're going the coordinator route. That's just me. I don't know if Michigan fans be over the moon about that, but yeah, if you're going the coordinator route, I would contact Georgia DC Glenn Schumann, because I think he would be. I think it's weird that you haven't heard his name a whole lot in these coaching searches. Like the Auburn search, I think it was mentioned on there briefly, but wasn't really considered. That would be a name I'll be watching. Another name is in the G5. If it starts going down this direction, Tyson Helton at Western Kentucky. It just amazes me why he hasn't gone to look at yet. He has won an average of 9 games at Western Kentucky. He's done very well there. Maybe a situation where potentially his hiring window, or at least him being a hot name for big jobs, has ended. But I don't know about that. Very strange that he has not been brought up yet. So this could be a job here to watch out for at least for him. Another name that's been brought up for this search is Clark Lee at Vanderbilt. I don't know. That one seems unlikely, but we'll watch it. But yeah, I think the two names to watch out for is Georgia's defense coordinator Glenn Schumann, and then Western Kentucky's head coach Tyson Helton, who his brother is Clay Helton, who the former head coach of USC. Both of those names I am surprised not been mentioned. I think they should be if this search goes in the direction of the Penn State job. At least that's my opinion. But I don't think it's going to. I think Kenny Dillingham is probably the leader in the clubhouse for obvious reasons. So up down the search, don't know yet. Frankly, we just don't know. We just don't know yet. As we are merrily rolling along here, I'm going to take a little breather here to see if the audio on YouTube is working, because I know this time last week, we had a live show on YouTube, and the audio was not working. And I realized it in the middle of it. So let's double check here. I'm sure it probably is working, but just double check. Okay, you guys are able to hear me on YouTube. That's fantastic. So no worries there. But yeah, last week on the show, on Tuesday's show, the audio on the microphone for YouTube was not working. It was working fine on Spotify, as it always works, but it wasn't working for the first 15 minutes or so last week, the first 10 minutes or so. But thankfully, it's working out. By the way, too, I think I brought this up last week. New location for the set over here. New little setup. Got the window behind me. We have nice natural sunlight coming in, so hopefully the look is a lot better. I think we'll probably keep this for the foreseeable future. I think, yeah, fits better, I think, in the older location. Nothing wrong with the old location, but this is, I think, in my opinion, fits better for the show. Let's see here. Is transfer portal next, or is it the first round of the playoff? I think it is transfer portal. All right, yeah. Transfer portal. Paper pop here. Josh Pistol's paper pop. Transfer portal on fire, particularly for quarterbacks. A lot of big names in the portal already. There's some minor names, and those are like the players who are leaving because of head coaching changes and whatnot. Though I will say, the old veteran, the 7th year, TJ Finley, the former LSU quarterback, Auburn QB, Western Kentucky, Georgia State. I believe he was like Kennesaw last year or this past season. He's on the move again. Congrats to him for being a transfer portal regular. How about that, TJ Finley? But that's not the name that we're worried about here for quarterbacks. These two names here are really, really big. First one, Dylan Raiola, leaving Nebraska. Now, this was rumored last year. If you remember back to about a year ago, there was rumors and theories of saying, hey, there's some talk about him going to Miami. If they don't go after someone else, it turns out that someone else was Carson Beck. But, yeah, so even going back to last year, there was rumors and theories about Dylan potentially leaving Nebraska. Some of it, look, I'm not taking shots at Matt Rule, but some of it is kind of because of him, and some of it is because of his old OC he had there originally was Marcus Satterfield, who I am not a big fan of, and others in the industry are not a big fan of either as an OC. Just look at the data, and it's pretty clear Satterfield, not the Satterfield at Cincinnati, the Satterfield who was Marcus Satterfield, not Scott Satterfield, but Marcus Satterfield, who was buddies with Matt Rule. Not a good OC. I think a lot of folks in the college football industry, the media industry, kind of agree with me on that. At least a lot of folks do. So that was, when Raiola went there before originally, when Satterfield was still the OC, kind of like, seriously going here? Well, they brought in Dana Holgerson. The offense got better, but just still kind of didn't really seem to look a whole that much different than what was going on with Satterfield. So Dylan leaving, I'm not really surprised here. This was bubbling last year. He is on the move now. So the landing favorite for him is not Texas Tech, even though there was all the, Mahomes comparisons and whatnot. No, he's not going there. I think Pete Nako's over on On3. Over at On3, Pete Nako's brought up, at least he mentioned on Twitter, hey guys, Dylan going to Texas Tech is not real. That's just an internet rumor in theory. He's not going there. In my opinion, the place that he might be getting looked at is Miami. Much like last year, it's the typical follow the breadcrumbs. The rumors last year were true, which I think they were, that Miami's in play here, with Carson Beck probably moving on. So that was a possibility. Certainly other options as well. That's a name to keep an eye on. That's a huge name, and I just don't believe he's coming back to Miami. I do think Miami's the favorite to land Raiola. I don't think there's a scenario of him going back to Nebraska is on the table. I think he's probably done with the Cornhuskers, which is unfortunate for a Nebraska fan. But again, this is bubbling last year. It's no surprise that he ends up leaving. But to some people, it is a surprise. But to those who follow this sport religiously, like me, and people who do shows, this isn't a surprise, as you were hearing these rumors back last year. Next one. This one, a little bit of a surprise, kind of, which is DJ Lagway. Now, think of me here. If this happened last year, if, Billy Napier got fired last year, Texas A&M would have been in play last year, because he originally was enthralled of Texas A&M. Folks are wondering, would he actually, if, again, Billy Napier left or was fired, Would he transfer to A&M? Clearly, A&M doesn't need his services anymore because they have Marcel Reed has elevated himself. So A&M not on the table there. This one, I don't know. I know a lot of folks are thinking about Auburn. I don't think so. Could he potentially go elsewhere? It's like Ole Miss potentially or LSU with Lane. I think LSU is probably number one, in my opinion. I think LSU is probably number one unless Trinidad doesn't follow Lane from Ole Miss to LSU. But I think a lot of schools are going to play here that we don't know. Like maybe Texas Tech could be an option here, unlike with Raiola. But I think LSU is probably the favorite for Lagway. But I think there's certainly a lot of schools who are in the mix, but we don't know yet. Now, as for why he's leaving, I think it's very much so clear. The head coach coming in, and perhaps probably seeing a lot of Raiola through tape and highlights and stuff. I would imagine this is just a mutual parting the ways. In a perfect world, I think Florida would love to keep Lagway. Again, I know a lot of folks look at him and go, man, he's a bust and whatnot. The talent's still there. The physical abilities are still there. He's been hurt so much, and he missed all of spring and parts of fall camp to where he didn't get a lot of chemistry with his receivers. So that's kind of why he's probably leaving. I think the staff is like, look, they're talented, but we want to go a different direction. Much like Raiola, I don't think Lagway's come back. I mean, this was a situation where, look, Summerall probably sat down with him and said, look, we know you're talented. We know you're, really gifted and whatnot in terms of your physical stuff, but your play on the field was just not that good enough. We're going to go a different direction. We need you to leave. So a bit of a shock here, but given how poorly he's played, I'm not totally surprised. I'm surprised it's went down this quickly. I thought it would be more of a, hey, we'll wait and see. It'll be a wait and see approach. But it seems like the new staff there in Gainesville is moving on. So speaking of moving on, Adam Mizell from Florida too is also out. He's leaving Gainesville, so he's also in the portal. There's some other names too, but not like big names. Man, these two names, Dylan Raiola, DJ Lagway, two big ones. Interested to see where these go, but Mizell could be an interesting pair there with Lagway. Could be a package deal. So that's like a name to keep an eye on if you're doing the whole, hey, who's following who, like which quarterback and whatnot. That'd be one to look at. Also for Auburn, speaking of the SEC, Malcolm Simmons is leaving. Perry Thompson leaving. No surprise there. I think there might be some more there with Auburn. Again, not because they're bad players. It's just I feel like Alex Galesh would want to bring in his own people, certainly. So that's potential that at least there is potential that receiving room that Hugh Freeze recruited is. I don't believe all of them are staying. So there could be more leaving there. I'll just leave it at that. But the transfer portal, much like the coaching cycle, could be pretty interesting, I think. These are certainly two names that have already, made some waves here. So make sure to see what else happens here going forward. Remember, the portal does open for most people except for coaching changes. It does open after the New Year. So January 2nd is when you'll see the database, the actual database that players can actually enter in will be open for them to do so. By the way, good clip on the show here. 18 minutes so far. Pretty good. College football first-round predictions. We did the big games last week. We're doing the smaller games today. The G5 games, the ones that have caused a bit of a stir, if you will, in the college football community. Here, actually, fixed my notes here. I forgot to add in something. There we go. First game, James Madison and Oregon. This will be on TNT. I believe this will be, is it going to be, Bob Susan and Louis Riddick calling this game. Oregon is a 21.5-point favorite for a reason. This is at home. James Madison is going on the road for this game. Both of these games, this game in particular, now the Tulane game is more interesting in my opinion. This one, I'm just being honest with you, I don't really have much of a shot here for James Madison. No, I'm not going to go full Bud Elliott and saying there's a safety concern here. No, I mean, look, there's a reason. They've earned their way. James Madison has earned their way into the playoffs under their current system, and they rightfully have. But in terms of, again, I'm not trying to sound like Bud here, but I don't know there's really a path here for James Madison. Like, that was a very narrow path to the upset. Maybe. It's turnover, special teams, stuff like that is what you have to look at. Now, what is interesting is that the only team to beat Oregon is, of course, James Madison's former head coach, Curt Cignetti, Coach Sig. And how they did it was, big plays in the passing game. Special turnovers are a part of it. So that's, I mean, maybe the blueprint that Bob Chesney and them can use there at JMU, but they don't have the personnel that Indiana has to a certain extent, the coaching that James Madison has, and or the coaching that Indiana has. And there's nothing against Bob Chesney. Bob Chesney's a very good coach. I mean, I've heard of him back to his days at Holy Cross. This one, again, man, the physicality for Oregon, the type of players they have, not to mention, too, they could be getting some guys back. Like Corian Moore should be back. I think Evan Stewart could be back. We'll see. I don't know for sure yet. Not confirmed. But look, it's on the road. I find this one very, very hard to believe that James Madison can make this very competitive. That's just my opinion. This is not me hating on James Madison. It's not me going, full Bud Elliott and saying this is a safety concern. I'm not going to go that route, but I do think that Oregon, I mean, let's not bury the lead here. I think they'll win and cover. And I kind of agree with the FanDuel line, which is 21.5 for Oregon. Now, the CFP Nerds model, granted, their model is a neutral site favorability type thing. So its model has it to where it has Oregon minus 1.7, which is very suspicious. But after thinking about it, it's like, yeah, this is a model that only does neutral field. It doesn't do the whole, home field away. So on a neutral field, I guess, yeah, Oregon minus 1.5 is possible, but very, very unlikely. But then again, CFP Nerds, Josh and Daniel's model has done a very good job this year for the most part. So we'll see. Look, I think Oregon and their physicality should overwhelm James Madison enough. I think the home field advantage should help. Again, I think James Madison, they will keep it close for a little bit. I think they're not going to be a team where they just roll over and die. Now, frankly, that could happen as well, but I don't know. We'll see. I'm hoping this will be a competitive game, but I think Oregon will just end up pulling away. So I'm picking them to win and cover. So I'm going against the CFP Nerds model, who have James Madison covering a lot. Like, they really do cover the spread, the 21.5. But I don't know, man. I find it very hard to believe that James Madison can match the physicality and the type of players that Oregon does have. Now, we've seen upsets before, but that's not necessarily the rule. That's the contrary to the rule. That's the, very, very rare to happen for a G5 to beat a major power conference team. Like, the last time it happened was what? Auburn losing to UCF. Like, for example, the last time Oregon played a G5 in a postseason game was the final game of the Bo Nix era, and they blew out Liberty, who was undefeated, and I believe that was the year after Hugh Freeze left. That was Jimmy Chadwell's first year there. So just for a historical example there for Oregon. So don't think they should have any problems. On this next one, I think there's more of a path here. There's at least a better chance here. So Tulane going to Ole Miss. We've seen this happen already. So you do the whole thing of, okay, did the first game, does anything from the first game matter to this game? I think somewhat. Now, much like how I think a lot of folks feel about Oregon, Ole Miss, even with the interim staff here, if Pete Golding taking over now, he's not actually interim. He's a permanent head coach, but some of the staff members are not. They're interim guys. They'll be moving on with Lane Kiffin to LSU officially. But for Ole Miss, it's Pete Golding's first out. So yes, it's his first time being a head coach. That's always a concern. But the roster, I kind of feel like Ole Miss is on a mission here. With the Lane Kiffin stuff and what went down with that, I think Ole Miss is on a mission. I think they want to prove that just because they lose Lane doesn't mean that you should totally discard them as a serious team. And I'm not going to. I think they're a very good team. Now, whether or not they'll win the national championship or not, that remains to be seen. Now, the first time these two met was 45-10. Not very competitive. Look at the box score here. I mean, Red Slot, the quarterback, had 56 yards passing. He was the team's leading rusher. Trinidad, threw for 300 yards, rushed for 100. So they had no problem over there. Now, granted, they kind of pulled away late in the fourth quarter. There was what was that? At one point, it was 23-3, and there was no scoring in the third quarter. So that's kind of the path here for Tulane, is to try to not get Ole Miss to build a big lead and kind of hope to hang around. Obviously, turnover, special teams, can't predict those, but those would be, things that you don't expect pretty much. That'll be in there, but I don't know, man. I much like the Oregon game, it's a very narrow path, but it is a little bit different, though. And I think what Tulane has going for it is John Summerall. This will be his, if they lose, it'll be his final game, and he'll be, fully invested with Florida. But Summerall's teams, though, they are more physical than your typical G5 team. That's all I was saying. And yes, I know the first game didn't really look that way, but look, they did limit Ole Miss from scoring in the third quarter. But Grange was at Ole Miss, dialing back a little bit, knowing that they were in firm control. Could be, but the only thing Tulane has going for it is that they are a very physical team, and they can somewhat match up with Ole Miss. Especially with first-time head coach, a coach, and going against a coach who is very much more experienced, even though they had a G5. Interesting situation, an interesting dynamic there with Summerall versus a first-timer and Pete Golding. So, unlike the Oregon game, and I guess we can look at the FanDuel number and the CFP Nerds model here. The CFP Nerds model, we'll get to in a moment, but the FanDuel model has it Ole Miss minus 17.5. CFP Nerds has it Ole Miss minus 7.6, a little bit more shorter of the spread, which is interesting. Again, I don't want to make it sound like that John Summerall is a back coach and this team is not physical enough and they shouldn't be competing. Much like James Madison, they've earned their way into it. I think they can hang around a little bit. Okay, just a little bit. I think they can. I think it's the old adage of, hey, it's hard to beat teams twice. Could be in play here, but great you, it is a G5 versus a Power 2 team. And Ole Miss, even with all the distractions and whatnot, I think they're on a direct team on the mission. I think they should win this game. But I do kind of agree with the CFP Nerds model just a little bit. I think this will be more of a competitive game. I think Ole Miss wins, but I do think Tulane does end up covering the spread up 17.5. Big spread, by the way, for a CFP playoff game. But, I don't know. I'm hoping we get competitive games here, but I can't promise that. I can't promise that. And, the playoff committee can't promise it. But I know there's a lot of distraction, or not distraction, but a lot of talk about, should the G5 be in. My stance on that is, look, I agree with Josh Pate. They should probably have their own playoff. They should be the buffer in between FBS and FCS, which they kind of already are, but literally making themselves their own division of college football. Like, just make it, I don't know, like the D1 B, and sort of split up D1 and kind of doing what we used to do with the FCS before we called it FCS. It was Division 1A and 1B, or Division like AA or whatever. Just make the big schools like the P4 or like the bigger programs, the bigger conferences, just make that Division 1, 1A, and then have Division 1B be the G5, and keep them separate. If you want to play them and in the non-con, like fine, but and treat them sort of like FCS, if you will, as like the buffer, and then have them do their own playoff and whatnot. I just think that for the sport, if you really want competitive playoff games and not have these spreads be like big numbers for half of the games, I would much rather the separate playoff model be in play instead of this. We're doing some sort of zombified, like combining both. I don't know if it's sustainable enough, but that's just me. Could be wrong here, but again, I get it for antitrust reasons. You can't really necessarily do that. But in a perfect world, which we don't live in, I would much prefer the G5 to be in their own separate universe and be like Division 1B, and then have the rest of the big boys be Division Division 1A. So at least that's how I would do it. I'm going to get some water real quick. We have some thoughts on the Marvel news. We get the Bucs. Get to the Bucs Falcons game too. And that should be it. Very quick show here. Good pace here. Not the typical long show. But yeah, I'm going to get some water real quick. Be on YouTube, and then we'll be right back. Okay, we're back on YouTube, unmuted, and let's continue. Avengers Doomsday, first teaser supposedly was coming out exclusively in theaters, but we all knew that wasn't gonna last very long, and has since leaked out. It started. So let me kind of backtrack here, kind of give you guys sort of a summary of what happened over the last 48, 72 hours. So starting at the end of last week, starting to hear rumblings of, hey, the trailers are in the possession of the theaters, but it's not a password, and the password has not been sent out yet by Disney's marketing. But as it turns out, on late Sunday night around midnight, early Monday morning, the passwords were sent out to theater owners from Disney, their marketing people. They got them, and apparently folks started watching the trailer. And it kind of makes sense because, yeah, I mean, obviously you want to make sure they run properly. If there's any issues, you obviously contact the provider. So that's I think what happened here as to why the description started getting out very early in the morning at around like 5 o'clock, I believe. And see, I think what happened was they got the passwords to the trailer. The trailers were, of course, you can access them. And I think folks in these movie theaters were like, all right, we'll watch them and, write down some stuff we see, and I'll put this on Reddit or something. I'm pretty sure that's what happened. But no footage was out yet. So for a while, it was just a description, and it seemed pretty legit from a lot of the social media scoopers and whatnot. And, of course, it turns out it was real. But at the moment, that's all we had, which was in contrary to what some folks are seeing from this, like, Brazil Reddit guy who was saying, hey, I've seen the trailer, and it's this and this and that. That started percolating over the weekend. That was obviously fake. But this stuff about this, like, 1 minute and 30-second little teaser, like, clip, if you will, turns out that's what actually ended up being the case. But for a while, we didn't have actual footage. But then, of course, like people like Josh over at Deboer started talking about it. I started getting wind of it, so I started tweeting out. And of course, this is all happening in real time with the transfer portal just blowing up with both DJ Lagway and Dylan Raiola leaving. But as people like Josh over at Deboer started live streaming, I was watching along with everyone else. Then the first screen capture came up on Twitter, and it's Chris Evans as Steve Rogers holding a baby. Grant you, the picture quality was complete garbage, but you can make it out. And I think some folks started to do the whole enhanced thing, put it in AI and whatnot, and it became pretty clear what it was. And it was matching up very well with the descriptions that were out there early that morning. So it turns out that folks were starting to get hands of the footage, whether it's people at the theaters were sending it, cell phone footage to the scoopers and whatnot, or to people privately. The folks were getting the footage, albeit it was really crappy. But then around noon yesterday, the footage is out there. It's out there on the internet. X, Twitter was filled of it over the place. If you were, if you're following all of these like scooper accounts and whatnot from Marvel and whatnot, you couldn't escape it. It was all over the place. And I watched it multiple times. I watched it several times. I think I may have downloaded it on my phone. So there we go. I think that's, until it gets out there, until Marvel releases it officially, I would recommend once it gets out there on social media, if you have no interest in going to watch James Cameron's Avatar, then I would suggest doing that. Save it on your phone. You should be okay before it gets deleted, which ended up going, which ended up happening on Twitter. But for a while, though, I mean, it was multiple hours. There were just like a whole bunch of these like Doomsday trailer or Doomsday footage that was out there, and it was legit. It was not AI. Which I know some folks at first were like, this is definitely AI, but the fact that Disney and Marvel started taking it down, it's like, yeah, that was real. There was no way it wasn't real, or it wasn't AI. It was definitely real, is what I was trying to say. Now, as for the footage itself, if you haven't, if you don't know what it is, I'm sure most of you know by now. It starts off with on a motorcycle in the countryside. Whatnot, don't know who it is yet. He parks the motorcycle, goes up. It's obviously, I think you can tell if you watch the footage, it's clearly the house that Steve Rogers and Peggy Carter were in at the end of Endgame. And it turns out it's actually Steve Rogers. You see the scale armor that he was wearing at Endgame. You see it's in a box. He puts it up. He's holding a kid, which I think some folks got wind of this early on. Like the rumors of Steve Rogers and Peggy having a kid, that was all the way back in like the summer. So that's not that didn't like surprise me. It was just really interesting to actually see it like with actual footage instead of like leaked set photos of the house and like descriptions online on Reddit and stuff. But yeah, that's pretty much the trailer, or at least not the trailer, but the footage we get. But then the interesting part is we started to hear stuff about, hey, they're going to do this like countdown clock and whatnot at the end of every single teaser they were going to do. At least that'll be a part of the marketing. We've heard that for a while too. And I'll be honest, like actually seeing it, granted, the footage is very crappy. Best quality we can get, but actually seeing that the little ticker they have, the timer they have, and you're hearing the ticking sound effect. To be honest, very I'm like creepy, but very eerie. I'll just say that, very eerie. I wonder how it's gonna play in the theater. But so let me try to think what I'm gonna say here. As for footage, and guess we'll get to the what we'll be doing going forward. As for the footage itself, pretty good, right? I think that's what you wanted for a small little snippet. It's hey, we're officially announcing that Chris Evans is actually in the movie. Granted, he's been the Hollywood Reporter and all the trades had that reported this time last year, but it's good to get some confirmation officially. Cool to see that he does have a kid. That's from the comics too. There's been multiple times where Steve Rogers, Captain America, has had children, so that's not a surprise for people who follow the comics and understand the lore. But man, I just gotta imagine for folks who have not seen the leaked footage yet and are going to see Avatar and seeing that's gonna be so mind blowing to see. I would love to be a fly on the wall and seeing folks who have not seen the leaked footage yet and who have no idea what to expect, seeing that for the first time. That must be like amazing to see. But yeah, I thought the footage was really good. Looks great visually. It does match up, by the way, with the other like the post credit scenes for like Fantastic Four and Thunderbolts. So it does match up with what the Russos had. At least their style that they were using. So it does match up. Now, as for what Marvel is doing going forward, the thinking is, and what it's out there, is that these are not going to be 4 separate trailers. These are going to be 4 separate like character based like teasers or ads, pretty much, or basically commercials. So we have one for Steve Rogers. We have one for Thor next week. I believe some like screenshots have already leaked. I know the description's out there already. So there's one for him. There's one for Doctor Doom. And then the last one we don't know. We don't know specifically. Some folks are saying it's an actual full-on teaser trailer. Other folks are saying no, it's something else. It'll be probably like it might be dealing with the Fantastic Four. I'm imagining probably would have to do with either them or maybe with an X-Men character, probably Cyclops, Scott Summers. So that's my feel. That's the direction I'm going. It'll probably be similar in the vein of these like character teasers. I don't think it'll be a big trailer. Now, as for when the actual teaser will come out, now what's interesting, so the footage yesterday from the Steve Rogers footage that was leaked out, before we got the full like actual wide view of it, the countdown clock or the timer had it at like 19 weeks or something, and it was like the ending date was actually in May. Now it turns out that's not true, and if you do the extended like actual full like visual of it, it's actually 12 months, 19 weeks. So it matches up well with Doomsday's release. But initially, before we got the expanded, I don't know, like width, if you will, of the screen of the full view of the screen, people were going, "Oh, hey, 19 weeks." Do the math on the actual timer. That's in May, and believe it or not, it matches up with Tony Stark's in-universe birth date of May 29th, 1970. So people are thinking, hey, May 29th could be the actual date of the first actual teaser. Instead of it getting it now, we'll get it like early summer, late spring. That's still my feel. I still think we're probably going to get something probably around like NBA, like NBA playoff time thing. We'll get something around that time. Sort of like what happened with Fantastic Four. Grant you that Fantastic Four was coming out in the summer, not in December, but yeah, I think in like our first teaser, yeah, I think we'll probably get in the spring, sometime around then. I don't think we'll get anything for the Super Bowl. Now we could get something for the College Football Playoff National Championship, maybe, but I feel like if things are going this direction, we'll get our 4 character-based teasers. We'll get those out of the way. Those will probably go online after they're done being in theaters. So we'll have a little bit of a lull. Then I think around like late spring, early summer is when we'll get our first trailer, like a actual teaser trailer. Then we'll get our first trailer during Comic-Con. I guarantee you we'll get something during Comic-Con week around July, in time for Spider-Man. And then we'll get like a second trailer around like, I don't know, Halloween or something. So that's my feel. The actual footage we did get and what we are getting, at least the first one we got, it looks good. I'll just say that. It looks really good. So if you haven't seen it yet, it's still somewhere out there. I'm sure it's on Reddit, somewhere on Twitter, but just be sure to watch it if you have and you have no interest in watching Avatar. And I will say this though, would be very, very cautious about putting it on your socials. Like don't be posting on your Twitter account. I mean, you can still do it, but you're gonna get your account deactivated. So just be careful with that. But yeah, Doomsday leaks, they're out there, and I'll just say this, man. There's more coming. Like we have the one next week of Thor. I think we're getting one with either Fantastic Four / X-Men. And then the final one will probably be Doctor Doom, and that's the one I'm really excited about. That Doctor Doom one. That one has a lot of potential to be very, very good. So Doomsday, Avengers Doomsday. Marketing's ramping up. It's starting to ramp up very well, and I would just say, and we'll move on. If the Chris Evans stuff, with that being confirmed, is real, it makes you wonder who else will be in this movie that hasn't been announced yet, at least officially. Like, in terms of not characters like Doctor Strange and people like that, because we know they'll be in the movie. Those are the obvious ones they were leaving out. But tell me about the other ones that we don't know that we've been speculating on. Just saying, just putting it out there. Kind of referring to the X-Men team. Will we get more team members? I'm kind of leaning towards maybe off of that. I know a lot of folks are saying no, which is understandable, but I mean, not just that, like other characters too. Other characters have been who have been speculated for a long time to appear. I mean, look, if they can bring back, Chris Evans as Captain America, Steve Rogers, who else could be coming back? Just a little food for thought there. Last little topic here, and we'll get out of here. Move the camera here. Falcons, Bucs. Of course, the Bucs lose. Now, thankfully for them, the New Orleans Saints, our biggest rival, the team we hate the most, they did us a good favor here, and they prevented the Panthers to be in first place very long. It's now Tampa in first place because of the common opponents. We beat San Francisco, they didn't. That's why we being Tampa have the head-to-head sort of, I guess, at the moment, at least the lead in the division. So at the moment, we'll be still in the playoffs. I don't know. We'll do the game breakdown and all of that on Thursday, but for the first Panthers game. But this game, man, this one was tough to watch. Now, look, I thought they were going to lose the game. Now, part of that was reverse psychology. So I thought, hey, I picked against Tampa, they'll win the game. They had me fooled, man. I mean, it was 28-14. Bucs were sort of in command. The offense looked good. And by the way, too, welcome back Mike Evans. There were some rumors and rumblings saying he could maybe try to come back before the end of the year. I wasn't buying it initially, but as we started to get closer, I was like, yeah, he's coming back. He's coming back. And he looked pretty good, man. He had a touchdown at 100 yards. Looked like Mike Evans to me. Man, the defense is horrible, man. And I know it's the classic, trash is trashed. It's been trashed for the entire year. I told you guys, even going back to fall camp, I just didn't think the defense was fixed. At least the pass defense was fixed after one training camp. It wasn't going to get fixed that quickly. It's really not. A lot of poor game management stuff. I know Baker had that pick late, but I'll be honest, he hasn't been the problem. Baker has been the problem. Offense has been the problem. Defense is, and it's been letting us down over and over again. And I'm getting sick of it. Bucs players are getting sick of him. You had Mike Evans walking off into the locker room. I'm sure you've probably seen the footage of him saying, 4th and 28, man, it's 4th and 28 or something like that, or 3rd and 28. And we let the game slip away. And we almost let the division slip away, but thanks to our frenemies, I guess, for temporarily in New Orleans, they prevented it from happening. So, the season is up to the future of Tampa, and the future of this team going forward in the postseason is in our control. The next 2 games against Carolina. First one's on the road. Next one, the season's finale in Tampa. And then between we have our in-state rivalry with the Dolphins, who is a non-conference opponent. So that's our next 3 games. Again, the offense up the prom. Defense is kind of what it is at this point. Can't trust it. Special teams, I will say, has gone better, but defense can't trust. Just no bueno. So, and that's it for the show. How about that? Less than 50 minutes. Who would have thought that? We'll be back as normal Thursday. I'll record an extra pod. The first one should be going out Tuesday of next week. Now, another one will be going out, I think, on Christmas. So be on the lookout for that. So until Thursday, again, just as a reminder, no shows next week and probably no shows the week after. We'll maybe do something on afterwards. But, yeah, this time of the year gets very weird, like this, like Thanksgiving and whatnot. Like 4th of July is the same thing. But, yeah, very weird schedule. So until Thursday, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Until we see each other again, take care. And we'll see you guys in the next stream. So, yeah, take care, and we'll see you guys on Thursday.